Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. I'm so glad to have you back today. And if you're visiting my channel for the first time, welcome. I do lots of DIYs, trash to treasure, furniture flips with my husband Chris, and thrifting adventures to fit into the farmhouse decor. So in today's video, I am doing a look for less. And this is a challenge, a collaboration hosted by Jamie of Board of Bananas. So Jamie has asked us, a look for less is where you find a more expensive item and you try to reproduce it by thrifting, garage sales, something around your house, and reproduce it for a lot less money, or of course free is always the best. So this is what today's video is about. It is a look for less challenge. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you, if you're new to my channel or you already have watched my channel, I have an old window obsession and I have quite a hoard. So I'm constantly kind of looking on Instagram and Pinterest for new ideas of what to do with the windows that I thrift, along with cleaning them up. So I have a hoard right now that I had picked off Marketplace, and I was looking for something to do with them. And then in one of my last few thrift hauls, I was able to thrift some seed sacks, grain sacks, original, and I thought I would use them for reupholstering, but actually they were a bit too scratchy, and it looks nice, but you wouldn't be able to sit on it too long because it would be kind of scratchy no matter how much I wash them up. So this is what I am doing in this video, as I am taking 3 of my Marketplace find windows, and I am using some of those grain sacks, and I am showing you what I did to upcycle some old windows. So here's my motivation for my look for less. I found this on Pinterest when looking up ideas for some grain sacks that I had bought or thrifted, and what I could do with some of the hoards that I have of my old windows. So I thought this was perfect for a look for less, because I knew I would be able to make it for way under $128, even though these grain sacks, they are beautiful. So how many of you would look at this and go, just throw this in the trash, it just needs to go to the landfill? But I look at old windows and I just see so much potential. I know they're dirty, but I can't wait to get them cleaned up. So along with these windows, I had these grain sacks that I had thrifted, and then some leftover chicken wire. Yes, actually from when we had chickens, that I think that we're down to the tail end of this chicken wire, and I thought those grain sack stripings I'd use for reupholstering, but they're just too scratchy. And as you see, some of the grain sacks have some holes in them. So I was really going to have to think outside the box of the pieces and parts I was going to be able to have to use out of these, because I definitely wanted the pictures. So for the first window, as you can see, it had a piece that was broken off, and only one of the sides was really attached with the caulking. But I think that the windows I had picked it up, they might have made like an outdoor greenhouse or something. There was these weird, really long nails on them that I had to work out before I could even get to the project. So we had to use a knife to get that one side released from the caulk. And then you could see how thick the older windows were, but we did not need the glass because it was missing a piece of the wood. So knowing that this window was missing one of its side, there was a random piece of wood that it did not come off this window, but it was going to need to be cut down because it did have some dry rot, but at least it would make a frame for the grain sack and chicken wire that I wanted to use for it. So to make it so there's not a seam in the chicken wire, and I really don't have very much left, he's just cutting the frame down for me so it will fit the entire width of the chicken wire. So here's where you can see that there's some dry rot on this little piece of extra wood, which I guess was a blessing that we had, because this window frame needed a 4th side. So now Chris is just taking that little extra of a lip off there so that this little piece of wood would sit flush. And then to secure it, he's just adding some Titebond wood glue on both sides, and then he'll add a couple brad nails to make sure that it stays in. And look, now we have a 4-sided frame for that chicken wire. And now he's just removing any of the old caulking that was left behind from the window. So for my next window, we are going to be putting some pallet wood. It was 4 sides, but it had no glass. So this is the perfect opportunity to make a pallet wood frame. So while he's sorting out what pallet wood he wants to use, I am going to get these pieces sanded down. You know, I like the distressing, but I also always repaint these, so I like to get them nice and smooth. I don't need to get all that paint off, I just need to get it nice and smooth. So now he's just cutting that pallet wood down to the size that it needs. And this is mostly, it's already been taken apart when he brings it home. So it's all just ready to use, so luckily he doesn't have to dismantle it the same day we're doing it. So now he's just dry fitting them in there to see if he needs to cut any of the pieces down to make them be a nice tight fit. And as you see, there's a little bit of gap there from one being bent, so he's going to have to play around with them a little bit to get them to be nice and butted up against each other. Of course, it would be nice if they all just went right into place the first time, but you know, it's a DIY project, so we know that's never going to happen. So he does end up having to cut one of the boards a little bit smaller. I mean, of course, I visually wanted it a certain way, but I don't always get, when it comes to pallet wood, what exactly I'd like it to be. So now he's just marking where he needs to rip this one down a little bit. So now that he has it that they all fit in, he can go and take them all out, and then he will run a bead of Tite Bond glue and then brad nail them in to make sure that it's nice and secure and they don't fall out or fall apart. I have to say, I think she's already pretty, and I haven't even given her a new paint job yet. So here I am just getting a little bit of that Tite Bond glue that squeezed out when he put the brad nails in, so I don't want that to dry. I don't want you to be able to see that on this part of the frame. So now this is the window that had no window in it. It's just the frame that we made. So I'm sanding that down so it's nice and smooth. And remember, I'm not sanding to get it all the way off. I'm just sanding it to get it all that really loose pieces, just to clean it up a bit, because I do want to paint it, but all that rough paint makes it distress really nice. So if you couldn't see how dirty this window was first, now you can really. I can see why this guy would give me such a good deal on these in the marketplace, because they were probably a pain to have to mow around, but I love old windows, so I can wash my hands and wear a mask, and I will get these things cleaned up. As this really wasn't that chippy of a window, so I was just, where the window is in the house, there's that little lip where it had been painted, so I'm really just sanding that off, and I'm actually sanding a little bit more, so when I do distress it with the paint that I want, that some of that wood shows through. So when I flipped this window over, I could see that there was going to be a problem, that the caulking was almost gone, and that is not a good thing, especially when you're reselling. I'm going to clean as much of this caulking off and get this gray paint that they must have painted the inside of their house gray. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm going to clean all this old caulking off so I can replace the caulking, so I don't have to worry about this heavy glass window falling out. So I'm just using a caulk gun to apply some window glazing that I picked up at Menards, and this will just dry and keep that window in there and prevent it from falling out. So now it's all caulked up, and I think these 3 windows are finally ready to get a paint job. So I'm going to be using my Kilz paint and primer in flat white, my go-to paint to paint these windows up. And yes, I do usually paint the backs of them. I think the total piece should be nice and cleaned and all cleaned up, especially as a reseller. So this is the inside of the empty frame that I'm going to be putting the grain sack and chicken wire in. So you want to make sure that you get the inside of this frame nicely painted. So yes, I did tape off that pallet wood just like I taped off the window. I just want to get this outside of this window frame. It's 2 different, woods and 2 different colors, and I just like my nice white, like my booth to all have the same color in it. Now I'm going to be removing the tape off the pallet wood, and then I'm going to be dry brushing just to tie the white of the frame in, and give that just a freshen up look of that pallet wood. So dry brushing is really when you don't have a lot of paint on whatsoever on your paintbrush, so you can see it just kind of, the pieces and parts that are raised on the palette would just kind of grab the paint. So now I'm on to sanding to distress the frame, but then I'll also run it across the palette wood. Even though I like that the paint caught all the little, for the dry brushing, I don't want it to be rough to the feel. So now that I've gotten the window with the glass sanded, it's time to go back in and really detail clean. This is the back side of the window, and I really want to make sure that any of that gray paint is off, any of the caulking, just to make it that it's nice and cleaned up, because you will see anything through, because I'm just covering the back with a grain sack. So as you see here, the grain sack isn't quite large enough to cover the entire window. So the only way I could figure it out was to cut it down the middle, the grain sack, on just the one side on the back side, and then cut that end off where it was attached together, and just iron it out. And it is what it is. It is a old grain sack behind an old window. So I can say that I have previously washed these grain sacks about 3 times trying to soften them up. So here I am just taking a hot steamed iron. They're really hard to iron. So trying to do the best as I can to get most of those wrinkles out and lay that seam down. So what I did was I flipped my glass, the way that I wanted it and how I wanted the image on the grain sack to show. And then I measured and made sure to the best of my ability that it was as centered as I could get it. And then I had cut off any excess of the grain sack and then taped it over, and then gingerly flipped it over, so that's where I am going to be stapling it. So what I'm doing now is I am just really feeling for the wood, so I'm not stapling into the glass, and far enough off that I'm leaving my self enough that I can cut the edging off so you could see the frame. So now that I've got it all stapled on, I'm just going to take my fabric scissors and I'm going to cut off that excess so you don't see the sacking from the back around the tops and sides of the frame. So now I'm just going to run hot glue all the way around the edges, and you can see those pieces of tape. That's where there were some holes. It's not on the other side that you can see it through the glass, but I knew I was going to be adding some hot glue. So I'm just, because grain sack will fray, so I'm just adding the hot glue with a popsicle stick. So it's hot because it comes right through the burlap. And then the same with where there's little pieces of tape that I'm really going to glue in that, so I don't have to worry about it coming apart on whoever buys this. So now I'm working on the one that's just a frame itself that we added the 4th part to. So I'm going to add this grain sack also. So I'm just cutting off the bottom, and I'm going to do the same thing because I think that worked out pretty good. Cut off the seam of the bottom that was attached together, and then cut the back part down the middle, and then iron it out so it's nice and flat. And I know I am truly blessed to have a husband that helps me out so much, that we work well as a team, because this is the last of this chicken wire. So this end part was really stuck together. The wires were and I looked in our town to find more chicken wire, but apparently it's one of those items that you can't find either. Well, you can find toilet paper now, but you can't find chicken wire. So anyway, so what we're doing here is just he's stretching it down, and then I'm stapling it in place. So I'm very happy to have an extra set of hands to do this. So here's a closer view where you can see that I put the staple right on the chicken wire, so that it was going to stay nice and secure. And so then after getting it all in place and stapled, it just needed to have that excess cut off. And now on the sides that we cut off or started with, they kind of have sharp edges, so I'm folding those over, and then I'm going to hammer them down. I am going to put the grain sack over it, and so I'm hoping that I hammer it down enough that it will not be pokey through. So now I'm ironing the grain sack for the chicken wire frame, and like I said, I have it on high and I have a lot of steam going because these really don't like to iron. Now I'm pretty much going to do the same as I did with the glass window. I'm going to lay the frame on top so I can see the image, cut off any excess that overabundance of what I don't need, and then tape it over so that it kind of stays in place while I go to staple it onto the frame. So now I'm just stapling that burlap sack down and I'm I'm feeling for the frame, so I'm, I want to be kind of halfway in, so when I cut the excess off, that it gives me room to hot glue it on so it doesn't, and then I don't want it to, get so close that it goes through the inside of the frame either. So same process with this frame. Cut the excess off up to the staple point. Don't go beyond. You don't want it to fall back off, and then hot glue it using a popsicle stick, so that it doesn't fray and you can't see all those edges from the front of the frame. So if you made it to this point of the video, thank you. I very much appreciate it. I know there was a lot of work into doing old windows, but we are just on the home stretch, and I just have some more detail work, and then these will be finished up. And yes, I know I could probably leave them as is, but to me, they're not quite completed quite yet. So to complete the palette window, I'm going to be making a simple wreath using the lavender for $1.47 from Walmart, and a embroidery hoop that I have a bunch that somebody had generously given me that was not using them anymore. So I'm taking that bottom stem off all the way to the last little dash, and this is not an easy task. So if you have some good metal nippers, this is a good thing to use, because I needed about 11 of these. So I didn't make you watch me do all of them, but you could see how far down I had taken off the excess. So what I'm doing here is I'm just spreading them out, kind of bending that wire, and there is a good side and a bad side, so you just kind of have to look at which way the lavender was made. And so I'm just using some wire that I got at the Dollar Tree, and to start off my piece, I do wrap it in the first piece a couple times just to make sure that first piece is nice and secure. So now I'm just going to attach it to the embroidery hoop, and I do like 4 or 5. I mean, it's whatever you feel that it's nice and tight and that the piece of greenery is not going to fall off. And so what I do, as you see, I kind of spread them out, find which one, what the good size, side is, and then it's just what's pleasing to your eye. So I go down pretty much to the next stem and just keep overlapping. I like my greenery and especially my wreaths to be as full as I can, and still keep it cost efficient for resale. So now at this point, all you do is you just work your way around the whole wreath. And then the little catchy part is when you get to the final one of your 2 stems butt up. So this part was kind of hard to video. I'm sorry that my elbow keeps getting in the way. But so I try to butt that final, you don't want that hole in between. So I try to get right in there and get that stem in there, and then wrap it around a couple times. You kind of have to get the other little pieces of the stem out of the way. And then I do try to put a couple pieces at the end of the top of the stem so it doesn't separate apart, and then tie the wire off on the back side and make sure that the pokey end is towards the greenery, so if there is a pokey end, that it's not poking the wall or anybody's hand. So I like to use these kind of hanging systems you just pre-drill, screw it in, and then you can hang your wreath from it. And I usually use the little where the top of the embroidery hoop is, and then that way you are able to change it out if you'd like. So for the window with the glass, I knew that I wanted to put some kind of a bed and breakfast. Those seem to have popular in my booth right now, so I thought I would make another one of those up. So I'm using this design from my store, my design studio, but I just want that bed and breakfast. So I'm going to ungroup this and just keep that swirly bed and breakfast. So I'm releasing it from its compound so it doesn't have that color background. I don't know why that throws me off, but it does. And so then I already ungrouped it, so then I need to go in and highlight and group together what I want to delete. So it's just individual so I don't accidentally grab anything else. So then I decided I kind of like those boxies, so I'm going to go ahead and keep those, and I might use it in my final design. So I'm not getting rid of those. And so I'd already wrote this farm cottage, I'm just making it up as I go. I just, like I always say, I spend a lot of time on Pinterest and Instagram just looking up original signs. So I really try hard to just do original signs, so I'm just playing around with it. So this is the final design that I came up for this window. You know, I'm farmhouse and primitive, so this is just what the saying I thought sounded good for this window. To cut this out, I have to separate it into two parts because of the size of the window and the size that I want my vinyl to be. So what I did was I copy and pasted that bottom part and put it on a new 12 by 24 mat, because in this program it lets you do this. And then I was able to size them so it would, both of these two parts would come together and fit what I needed to for the window. So here it is all welded out, and this is still, it's on its original paper because I wanted to make sure that I'm all measured out, that I'm level, that I've taped off where I need it to be center, because once you start attaching vinyl to glass, it does not like to come off. So I know that this is upside down looking to you, but there was no other way for me to show you how I attach vinyl to glass, because it is tricky, and I usually ask my husband for help because it's easier for somebody to have each side of this. So what I'm going to be doing is taking that white piece that was underneath the vinyl and laying it back down just as a protectant so it doesn't actually grab, and just inching my way down that vinyl with my transfer tape to make sure that it stays level and that it is nice and evenly centered. And then I'll be doing the same thing with that second phase of my saying. Just put that piece down. That's the side that's shiny. It won't stick on it. And so that's why I'm laying that down so it doesn't actually grab. That vinyl just likes to grab. So for this part, there's that piece of tape at the bottom. I'm not measuring from the bed and breakfast. I'm measuring from that piece of tape because I know I can move that little and sign and word if I want. So I'm just measuring, making sure that I've got it center before I start attaching it. And I actually have to say that's the nice thing about this new technique of using a whole bunch of different fonts, that if they're a little bit off slightly, you don't really notice it as much when you have a whole bunch of different fonts. So here's where I thought, just for my sanity, it would just be better to cut that and off and just worry about the carriage house wording, and then I could eyeball center that and in between the bed and breakfast and the carriage house, and not have to worry about that vinyl quickly grab into that glass. Then after removing my transfer tape, which is actually an old piece of duck brand contact paper that I use, I'm just going to eyeball center that, and that's just the easiest way that I felt it was to put that word on. So would you have just thrown this old window frame out and not cleaned it up? Did you ever think about putting some pallet wood or some beadboard behind this and making a wall decor piece out of it? And I absolutely love making those lavender wreaths. That pop of purple is just beautiful. And what would you have done with a 3-sided window frame? Would you have just thrown it out, thought it was a lost cause? I just think it's funny how God gave us that extra piece of wood that was just randomly in this pile of window frames, that we were able to make a 4-sided frame. And I'm so glad that I found a use for this grain sacks that were a little bit scratchy. And would you ever thought about putting chicken wire in front of it? And I'm on the fence of adding this wreath to it. Can you give me your opinion? I absolutely think that you can still see that beautiful window and that beautiful chicken wire and that beautiful grain sack. And I really do like the simplicity of this wreath. And I absolutely love this bed and breakfast saying. I just can change it with every stencil I make to fit into any theme. I just absolutely love adding different words to it to fit the different themes. So which one of these windows makeovers was your favorite? So I thank you so much for watching today's video. Did I inspire you to look at old windows in a different way, or would you have just thrown those windows out? So remember, this is a challenge hosted by Jamie of Border Bananas and her channel, her DIY channel. And other channel will be down in my description box, along with the playlist of all that participated in this Look for Less challenge. Thank you so much for watching my channel, and if you're part of my YouTube family, thank you. And if you'd like to become part of my YouTube family, please consider hitting that subscribe button.